Okay, so I wanted to put out some actual useful builds for new players, especially with all the new players who are going to be introduced to the watch. And as we all know, this watch boosts our characters quite a bit, so much so that we get kicked from certain things if our watch level isn't at least 1,000.
You are no longer in a group.
So for all you new players out there who are going to be introduced to the watch leveling system, these builds are going to be for you. A lot of content creators tell you these are the builds that you're going to want to get going into the end game. But you're not actually going into the end game. You're actually starting your character out at watch level 0. So going into the end game isn't very useful. And a glass cannon build isn't going to get you into that end game. It's just going to frustrate you and cause you to quit the game. Because you're going to go up against these NPCs and you're going to get one shot and downed. Especially if you're going to jump straight into heroic difficulty, which we all know that's the best thing to do. Jumping straight into heroic difficulty is what's going to get you those end game pieces that you're going to need. And you don't want to create a build on normal difficulty, then work your way up to heroic, because you're just going to be deconstructing builds that you already put your time into, when you could just put your time into a heroic build and be done with it. But you're going to have to be able to stay alive long enough in order to do that. So these are the 4 builds that I'm going to recommend to you in progression. First is going to be with normal gear that you can farm anywhere. The second is going to be with named items. The third is going to be with named items and exotics. And then the final one is going to be the build that you're going to strive for. These will all 4 of them be solo builds designed specifically to keep you alive in heroic difficulty. So let's get straight into it. You're going to want to get the gunner specialization for the armor on kill, and then you're going to start working into your weapon damage. Then you're going to want to get a high RPM SMG with either strained or preservation on it. Preferably preservation, because that's going to give you healing to your armor. Next, you're going to want an LMG with strained on it. You're going to want the LMGs because they're high damage dealing weapons. You're going to want a piece of Walker and Harris with armor. You're going to want to get critical hit chance and critical hit damage everywhere on all these builds. If you get one with headshot damage, that's fine. But with an SMG and an LMG, the headshot damage is not going to be so good. For the chest piece, you're going to have a Sokolov with weapon damage, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage. You're going to have the talent Obliterate. Critical hits increase total weapon damage by 1% for 10 seconds. It stacks up to 25 times. I have 2 pieces of Bellstone Armory for the armor regen and the armor on kill. The backpack is going to have Vigilance. It increases total weapon damage by 25%. Taking damage disables this buff for 4 seconds. You're going to want to have armor, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage on everything. You're also going to have a piece of Grupo for the critical hit damage. You're going to have weapon damage, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage. Then your second piece of Bellstone Armory, you're going to have armor, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage. One piece of Gilligard for the extra armor. You're going to have an armor core, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage. For the second build, we're going to up this a little bit with named items. You're still going to want to have the gunner specialization. For the SMG, we have the Emmeline's Guard with perfect preservation on it. For the secondary weapon, we're going to have the Good Times LMG. Talent on this is going to be perfect fast hands. This time, we're going to have 3 pieces of Walker and Harris for weapon damage, damage to armor, and damage to health. First piece is going to have armor, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage on everything. The second piece is going to be the chest piece, and we're going to have Intimidate on it. Intimidate is going to give you more weapon damage for bonus armor. It's going to have weapon damage, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage wherever you can. The third piece of Walker and Harris is going to be the Matador. It's going to have armor, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage everywhere if you can get it. The talent on it is Perfect Adrenaline Rush. Whenever you are within 10 meters of an enemy, you gain 23% bonus armor for 5 seconds. It stacks up to 3 times. This is going to help with the Intimidate. While you have bonus armor, you gain 1 stack each second up to a max of 9. Each stack increases weapon damage by 4% to enemies within 10 meters. For the next named item, it's going to be the Carl's Holster. It's going to have Skill Haste, armor, critical hit damage, and weapon damage on it. For the gloves, we're going to want Grupo. We're going to have weapon damage, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage on it. Next up is the Fox's Prayer knee pads. It's going to have armor, damage to targets out of cover. You're going to want to have critical hit chance or critical hit damage on this. Next up, we're going to introduce exotics into the build, preferably the Scorpio. The Scorpio is going to be the best weapon that you're going to get for new players. We're still rocking the good times, and now we're going to change up the build for more regeneration. You're going to want to have one piece of Bellstone Armory for the armor regen. You're going to want armor, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage wherever you can get it. And then you're going to have 2 pieces of Galling gear. First piece is going to be the chest piece. You're going to get status effect and armor regen. You're going to want to have armor, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage everywhere that you can get it. The talent on the chest piece is, again, Intimidate. The second piece is going to be the knee pads. You're going to want to have armor, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage on this. Unfortunately, I don't have a piece for that. Next up, we're going to have 3 pieces of Gilgard for total armor, health, and armor regen. So that's going to give you 3 armor regenerations, which is going to help out a lot. For the backpack, we're going to have, again, Adrenaline Rush. You're going to have armor, and you're going to want to have critical hit chance and critical hit damage everywhere you can. For the next piece of Gilgard, you're going to have armor, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage on that as well. And for the third piece, you're going to want armor, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage. You're going to be stacking a lot of armor on this because the Scorpio is what's going to help you have less damage and more survivability, because the Scorpio is going to shock when you hit the NPC 6 times. It's going to shock the NPC, which is going to stun lock him in place, allowing you to kill him. Now, the fourth build is the build you've been working towards. This, in my opinion, is the best solo build that you can have. It has the most survivability and does a great amount of damage. For your primary weapon, you're going to have the Scorpio. For your secondary weapon, you're going to have the GR9. You're going to have this for the 200 round magazine, and for the talent on it, you're going to want Steady Hands. Steady Hands hits grant a stack of 1% accuracy and stability. At 100 stacks, it consumes them to refill the magazine. It refills 100. So provided that you don't miss very often, you can almost indefinitely keep firing without having to reload. Next up, you're going to want 3 Foundry Bulwark pieces for the total armor, armor regen, and shield health. On this build, you're going to want to be using a shield. You're going to have a 6 skill tier shield with the armor and your skill tier on the backpack. You're still going to want the same specialization for the armor on kill. For the first piece of Bellstone Armory, you're going to want to have armor, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage. For the second piece, you're going to want armor and critical hit damage. For the third piece, you're going to want armor and critical hit damage. For the knee pads, you're going to want the Uzina brand set. For the total armor, you're going to want armor, critical chance, and critical hit damage on that. Next up is the exotic Memento backpack. You're going to get weapon damage, armor, and a skill tier. You're going to want to have critical hit chance on the mod slot. This is going to be an up-in-your-face build because you're going to want to collect those trophies. The trophies, the chest piece talent, and the shield is what's going to keep you alive. The talent on it is enemies you kill drop a trophy on death. Collecting this trophy provides you both a short-term and long-term buff. The first of which scales with the number of core attributes equipped and lasts 10 seconds. You're going to get 5% weapon damage, 10% bonus armor, and 5% skill efficiency. These are very powerful buffs. For every trophy collected, you gain an additional 1% weapon damage, 1% skill efficiency, and 0.1 armor regeneration for 300 seconds. The max stack is 30. For the chest piece, you're going to want the 0F's named chest piece. This is going to give you the shotgun damage. Then you're going to want to have weapon damage, critical damage, and critical chance on this. It comes with the perfectly unbreakable talent. When your armor is depleted, it repairs 100% of that armor. The cooldown is 55 seconds. That may seem long, but it really isn't. You're going to want the Reviver Hive, just in case you get overwhelmed, and the Crusader Shield. I'm going to leave you with gameplay for each of these builds. This is going to be the first build, so that you can see how they perform in heroic difficulty. And as I said, the first 3 builds are going to be without any watch leveling for help. This way you can see how they perform as a new player. For these first 3 builds, you do not want to use the Crusader Shield. You are not going to be putting out enough damage to stand toe-to-toe with an NPC, especially on heroic difficulty. You're going to want to use the Defender Drone as a distraction, because without your watch leveled up to 1,000, you're not going to be doing enough damage to kill the NPCs outright. It's going to take a while. It's going to take about twice the time that it would if you had a full watch. I'm speeding these clips up a lot so that you don't have to sit through a lot of gameplay. This is the second build. This is the third build. I ended up switching LMGs in this run with a LMG that I had gotten from a previous run with the first build. I just felt like running with a different LMG. It's up to you what you want to run with. I also ended up getting rogue agents at the end of this run, so I'm going to clip to the rogue agents on this one. But before I switch over to that rogue gameplay, I wanted you to see the armor regeneration on this build. And this is the fourth build. For those of you who stayed to the end, I thank you. And I'll see you in the next one.